Hey, beautiful soul. Welcome to Spirit Speakeasy. I'm Giovanni, Joyful Medium. I'm a working psychic medium, energy healer, and spiritual gifts mentor. This podcast is like a seat at the table in a secret club, but with mediums, mystics, and the spiritual luminaries of our time. So come behind the velvet ropes with me and see inside my world as I chat insider style with profoundly gifted souls. We go deep, share juicy stories, laugh a lot, and it wouldn't be a speakeasy without great insider secrets and tips. You might even learn that you have some gifts of your own. So step inside the Spirit Speakeasy. Hey, beautiful soul, if you were about to level up, do you think you would know it? As a sensitive, it might not look or feel how you would guess. So in this episode, I'm going to share 5 signs that you're nearing an energy up-leveling and 3 tips you can cling to through the shift. Welcome into another episode of Spirit Speakeasy. I'm so happy that you're joining me today. I don't know how it is where you are right now, but I'm recording this just a handful of days before it's going to come to you, and it is rainy and gloomy. If you're watching the video version of this, it kind of looks bright in the room that I'm in, but it's really not. It is a rainy, gloomy day. So I'm happy to be here recording with you. You know, I was inspired for this episode as I was really just kind of sitting with the idea of all the shifts and changes. If you're listening to this when it's being released, we are just tipping into February 2024. And today I really want to share with you 5 surprising signs you're nearing an energy up leveling and 3 crucial tips to cling to. So when we think about the idea of energy up leveling, we often think about the result, right? So maybe you get that promotion, you find that partner, you have a shift in the way that you're doing your spiritual practice or the way you're experiencing something, or maybe you just understand something to a deeper level. But we're thinking often about the end result. And a lot of times we don't necessarily realize the energetic process as it's happening. And when we think about energy up leveling, right, it doesn't necessarily mean like a promotion, like I was saying, like a hard win or an actual tangible something that we're gaining. It could be something like a letting go. Because think about if we're letting go of a big hang up or something significant to us, well, that's an energy up leveling. We're creating space to move to the next phase, right? It could be a moving onward and upward. I know we had that episode a while ago when I physically moved, but it could just be you moving onward and upward energetically, emotionally, internally. It could be peeling back your own healing onion. We always talk about healing like an onion. There's many layers, many forms and depths of understanding for us to have. So it could be, you know, you reach an epiphany, an aha moment. That's the result. But what about the process when you're getting there? Maybe for you, it shows up as a deeper understanding, a fork in the road, or even arriving at a next chapter. So I'm going to talk today about the 5 surprising signs that you're nearing an energy up leveling. And as I talk about this next segment, I want you to feel into, think, be available for it to come to your awareness, how some of these might be showing up in your world right now, or even in the recent past. Some people start to see and feel signs or even like energy shifts when the shift is on the horizon, like when they're starting to near the process. And then others might not feel the shift until they're in the middle of it or until they're already just right past it in hindsight. So it's really a spectrum, like most things, like you might imagine. But I just am curious to know if any of these 5 show up for you. And any of these 5 sure signs alone are a great indication that change or shifts or energy movement is brewing under the surface. But if you have more than one, it's even more indication that you're in the midst of a shift happening. And if you have all five, well, I'm going to give you some tips to really help you move through the process and what to be focusing on so you can get the most out of this time period where you're nearing this energetic shift. So I want to talk about how this might be different as a sensitive. If you are listening to or watching this podcast or share time with me in any of the ways that I share time with people, you probably are sensitive to some degree, even if you don't really like to identify as that. And a lot of times things show up for us as energetically or emotionally sensitive people in ways that are just different and more nuanced than others. I guess I'll say it that way. And the first sign that I feel like is so surprising, but it seems to be true every time, is the surprising sign of going inward. Now, as I talk about these, I'm going to give some examples of how they can show up and how they might look different for different people. But we often think that going inward is, perceived maybe by the general public as like a more negative thing or a less outgoing thing, but it doesn't have to be. It can just be a quieting where maybe you're still going out and engaging with people or, things that you have commitments to or events, but you're just a little bit more quiet. You're in more of an observant state. Or it could also look for you like time alone, like you're wanting extra rest, like you're wanting to more intentionally. I think a lot of us kind of intentionally try to choose who's in our personal space anyway, but maybe it's an even more tight circle during the times when you're going within. Maybe there are just really a few people that you're sharing with, and everybody else is a little bit more brief engagements or, quick conversations, a little more surface level. So, if you're experiencing this feeling of going inward, it can also just be being more introspective, meaning like looking within a little bit more for answers, for how you feel about things, for what you're actually wanting for yourself, for example. It can also be retrospective, like a lot of us experience this kind of at the end of a calendar year, looking back over the year that we just experienced. Sometimes we do it at like a birthday time or any type of like, if you've got kids, sometimes it's your kids' birthdays that make you retrospective, wanting to look back at, the last year or the last period of time, or even, how far you've come in 10 years, for example. Those are some of the ways it can show up, this idea of going inward. And I know that might sound surprising that going inward is a sign that we're nearing an energy up leveling. Well, it's us really starting to take stock, starting to understand where we are, perhaps where we thought we would be, maybe where we're wanting to go. But that going inward, that quieting, that taking time alone really is the first surprising sign that you're nearing an energy up leveling. The second sign I want to share with you is becoming more prickly in your emotions or even more emotional yourself. For some, this can be presenting in your life as, if it's in the shadow, for example, as wanting to avoid emotions or numbing most emotions so you don't have to process, feeling like you feel overly sensitive, for example. But there's a fine line between overly sensitive and just a little bit extra sensitive. And what I'm talking about is more of this, certain people just kind of either rub you the wrong way, or you're more aware of certain biases in the world or certain ways that people process things. It could even be you becoming more aware of the way people speak to each other, for example. And that feels a little prickly. I'm sure there's a better word than prickly, but that's the word. That's the word I have. That's how I perceive it and how I feel. It just feels a little prickly. You might be noticing either in your own family, in your own systems, work or home or school or wherever you are, or in your own community, just the injustices, it might be more on the surface for you, this idea of things that really aren't fair or aren't being handled in a way that is considering everyone, for example. So it can be you becoming more aware, right? Like your emotions become more prickly for others. It could be you becoming more sensitive to other people's emotions, like you're really feeling what other people around you are going through, or you're aware of what they're feeling. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're feeling it yourself, although you could be experiencing those emotions and just might not even know that they belong to others around you. A lot of us have that experience a lot of the time if we don't know how to manage our energy. But it could be you just being a little more perceptive, and it could be you taking on emotions of others in a deeper way, or displaying your own emotions in a more kind of external way. Being more emotional is how a lot of people would say it. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're having more emotions that you usually do. It just could be the way you're displaying them, the way you're showing them. You might get a little more emotional at movies a little more quickly. You might kind of have compassion right on top for people. Sometimes where in the past, in that retrospective sense, perhaps maybe before you would look at a situation and want to dissect it and see all the angles, whereas maybe in this phase, when a situation occurs, like on the news, for example, maybe your first place you go to is compassion. So maybe you're feeling your emotions a little differently. But becoming more prickly in your emotions or more sensitive is definitely a surprising sign that you're nearing an energy up leveling. A lot of times we tend to think culturally that when we are feeling more sensitive, that it means that we are kind of falling apart, when actually it's the opposite. It means that your energy is up leveling, you're expanding, you're learning more, you're learning to process in a new way, a different way. And just like trying on new shoes or a new size of shoes, it can feel uncomfortable at first a little bit. And that's what this can often be seen as. We often think, growth and expansion and energy up leveling is going to be all sunshine and roses. And a lot of times it's not. A lot of times there's some discomfort as we get used to these new vibrational levels of being, as we get used to these new gifts, perhaps in your case, as we get used to the new level of energy that we're able to reach or able to work in. So the third sign that is surprising that you're nearing an energy up leveling is this inner urge to organize. This is kind of a fun one, and I think this will surprise a lot of you. So when I'm talking about this inner urge to organize, it's not necessarily like someone in your life saying, hey, you need to organize this closet. It's this like urge or drive from within you. And it can show up differently for all of us depending on our personality, on who we are in the world. It might look like organizing your life. Some people are like, I got to organize my schedule. I want to make time for all the things. I want to be more intentional with my time. It could look like organizing your health. Maybe there are some things in your health or your wellness or your practices around your physical body that you are getting that nudge to kind of get organized, get going. Maybe it's the way you treat your body or the way you talk to your body, even. It could even be something like organizing your cabinets. This is what happens to me sometimes. Do you ever get this urge to like clean out under your cabinets or like reorganize under your bathroom sink, for example? Or, you have a shelf or something that you're just like, oh, I really want to take everything off of that and go through it and organize it. It can be that for you. It shows up differently for everyone, but it's this urge, this need to organize. And if you're someone who's a collector, maybe it's organizing your collection. I One of the things that I like to do is kind of organize my closet by color. And so I have it going in a color wave, from just like one color through the shades of the rainbow all the way to the other end of the spectrum. And I feel uncomfortable if it's not organized in that way. So that's something that if it ever, mine doesn't really get super unorganized, but if it ever gets a little bit unorganized, or I just feel like I want to reassort things, that's sometimes how it shows up for me. And I know that this is surprising. Like I said, these are surprising signs. It might not seem like it's very linear to think like, well, if I'm organizing my closet and feeling more emotional and wanting to spend more time alone, how are those signs that I'm getting ready for an energy up leveling? With this organizing, remember, things are not isolated. What goes on in one area of our life, of our soul, of our growth affects everything else. So you might be at the place where you can organize your pencil jar, and the next little time period, maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's a month from now, you're at the place where you can organize your meetings or your calendars, or you can get yourself into a class, or you can do something else. So it's all leading us to this growth and expansion. But if you are getting that internal nudge or tickle or push, or just like even a feeling on your mind that you want to organize something, that is a pretty surprising but sure sign that you're nearing an energy up leveling. What was the last thing that you organized? I'm trying to think of the last thing that I organized. I just had to do a bunch of hanging clothes and reorganize some of my hangers, which is probably why I have that on my mind. The fourth surprising sign that you're nearing an energy up leveling is feeling frustrated or unsettled. So I know that this might be a little bit surprising. Like, what do you mean my energy is up leveling if I'm feeling unsettled? Well, it's kind of like that sand in your shoes feeling. And it could be something simple like that for you, where you just feel like, something feels a little off. And maybe that's why you're wanting to rework your schedule, or maybe that's why you're wanting to, change some things in the organization of your life or the way you move through the world. But it could be just feeling frustrated, like you keep bumping into the same corner, or like you feel stuck, is how some people articulate it, or like you feel blocked and you just feel a little bit frustrated and unsettled. It could be the knowing or the yearning that there must be more than this. Like, I want more than this. I feel frustrated that I am doing the same thing and getting the same results. Something has to change. But it's often this little bit of feeling of unsettled. And sometimes it's part of someone's process that they'll feel like frustrated, unsettled, uneasy. And then the next step is they're going to organize their closet. And as they're organizing their closet, they process and realize, you know what, I'm feeling all these extra emotions, and let me just be by myself and do my closet and process these emotions. So you see how all of these things can kind of work together. That's a really basic example. And like I said, these things will show up on a spectrum in so many different actions in our life, but we're looking for that emotion or that base underneath of like going inward, becoming more prickly or sensitive in your emotions, inner urge to organize in some area, feeling frustrated. And this feeling frustrated, sometimes, I want to say, depending on where you are in your personal growth, depending on if you're dealing with a little bit of shadow work, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, and then I'm going to give you some tips. If you're in the shadow a little bit, meaning like you have some emotions to process and some things you get to work on in yourself, which we all do. It's an ongoing process. It might feel like you're frustrated and annoyed with other people. Now, some of that could be valid. Maybe they're doing frustrating and annoying and unsettling things. Some of it you might consider looking at, is it a need to control challenge? Are you feeling like you need to control other people's behavior? Are you starting to feel, sense, decide that this person, for example, maybe they're just not supposed to be in your life anymore. Maybe it's time to move away from someone who's always making you feel prickly, or for you, who you're realizing maybe their behavior isn't in alignment with how you now know that you get to be treated, for example. There's a lot of unlimited, really, ways that this can show up in everyone's world, but take a look at what you're feeling frustrated with or unsettled with. And like I said, sometimes you might not even be able to put your finger exactly on it. You just might know, yeah, I just feel like I'm not done with something. Like there's something that I'm still in process about, or something more for me to do or accomplish, or this brings me to my next point. So that was 4, feeling frustrated or unsettled. The 5th surprising sign that you're nearing an energy up leveling is wanting to spend time in the energy of learning. Now, I know that's an interesting way that I said it. I'm going to dissect it a little bit. Whether it's like you have a new spiritual interest that you want to pursue, or you want to get back to or start a meditation practice or a mantra practice. Maybe you want to learn how to work the mala beads with mantras. Maybe you are not feeling spiritual at all and you want to learn to make bread or anything in between, right? It's this interest in learning that kind of is calling you. And like I said, it could be any area. Maybe you're wanting to paint. Maybe you're wanting to deepen a skill that you already have. Maybe you're getting called or feeling the urge to learn about a skill that's like an offshoot of a skill you already have. Maybe you already do data management, but you also want to do data processing, or you just feel like, you know what, I should learn about this little offshoot. If you are someone who plays with spiritual tools and has a spiritual practice, maybe you just feel like, I want to learn a new oracle card deck, or maybe you read oracle cards, but you start feeling like, you know what, I want to start learning the language of tarot, which is its whole own undertaking. Sometimes for me, it'll come in as like, yeah, I want to learn more about this area of town, or, in where I am in Southern California, we have lots of little pockets of areas. Or maybe you want to learn more about editing or processing or writing or anything at all. Like I said, it could be even about baking bread or how to do certain recipes. It could be how to garden. It doesn't have to be or feel spiritually related at all. Moving energy in one area of your life moves energy naturally in all the other areas. It just is like dominoes. So maybe you're feeling the nudge or the stir or the tickle to learn something new as part of this. Now, it's just an interest in learning in general. It doesn't have to be like a going to school skill set type of a thing. Maybe you're interested in learning more about your neighbors, or like I said, your neighborhood, or so it could be anything at all. Maybe you want to learn, like recently, in some of these videos, you can see it a little bit, but recently I started learning how to crochet scarves and things. So that was no schooling necessary for that, just a little bit of YouTube. But what is it that you're feeling interested in, intrigued by, like you want to know more about? It might even be a person in your life. That's okay too. It's just this stirring. And anytime we're learning something new, even if we just kind of stumble upon it and didn't realize we were going to learn something new that day. Do you ever have that happen where you like didn't realize you were going to learn something new today, and there you are learning something new today, and you're like, oh, this is cool, I didn't know this. Even something like that seems like it didn't show up of your own choosing, it's part of that energy moving. So what is it that you have been learning recently? What have you been feeling interested in learning? What have you been learning about learning or exploring? I'm going to go back through these, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the shadow work in it, and then I'm going to give you the 3 crucial tips to cling to. So these 5 surprising signs you're nearing an energy up leveling were the desire to go inward or spend time alone. And that, like I said, it can include rest, becoming more prickly in your emotions or more emotional. Number 3 was the urge to organize something, your life, your closet, whatever it is. The 4th was feeling frustrated or unsettled in some area. And the 5th was wanting to spend time in the energy of learning or understanding. Now, I know those might not necessarily seem like they're going to directly lead to like the promotion or the big house you want to buy or whatever, the relationship you want to build, whatever it is. But all of those things working together start to help you focus in new ways, in different ways, start to grow you and expand you so that you can release what's not serving you, so that you can be gently drawn to focus in the areas that your soul's calling you to focus in. And for me, it often is more like breadcrumbs where I need to be gently led to an area. And it might be through, maybe I hear something on a podcast and then the next day someone mentions it. And I think, you know what, I should look that up. And then it kind of goes down the rabbit hole from there. So all of these things can be leading you and are leading you towards your highest and greatest good, which includes several energy up levelings frequently, like throughout the year, throughout, it depends how you want to measure the time of your life. Throughout your life, you have lots of energy shifts, up levelings, growth points. Even throughout one calendar year, you have lots of opportunities for expansion, for up leveling, and your energy and your soul are continuously trying to level you up, so to speak. Let me touch into the shadow. I know I mentioned it earlier. Shadow really is, it's not negative. A lot of people, from media and all the spooky things, we think like, oh, shadow bad. Shadow's not bad. Shadow is the pieces and parts of ourself that we hide from ourself, usually out of fear. Always out of fear, but that fear can stem from trauma. It can stem from something that we like, a false belief, someone else's beliefs, a program, a pattern. So the shadow aspect is just when we're in the less healthy side of the spectrum or the less ideal side of the spectrum. There's value there. We can learn when we're in the shadow side. I touched into it a little bit in this becoming more prickly in your emotions, for example. If you were in the shadow side of that experience, rather than feeling your emotions or trying to identify your emotions, working with them, sometimes how that can present in the shadow side is wanting to numb out the emotions, like refusing to feel the emotions. Now, that habit was, like I said, numbing of any kind. Maybe it's like you're going to binge watch a show. That sometimes that could be healthy, but if it's something that's ongoing and hindering our growth temporarily, it really is put in place by a version of you that is there to help you, and it's some version of you, some aspect of you trying to protect you from processing challenging emotions, for example. It doesn't mean there's anything bad in there. It just means, oh, you can understand when X happens, I want to zone out and doom scroll on my phone and not focus on the emotions of why. And it's just you really learning more about yourself. Sometimes something can show up in the challenge. For example, like if you are spending time in the energy of learning and there's something that you're interested in, maybe immediately in the shadow of that, you want to give yourself this whole story about how you're not good at school and so you're not going to be good at learning anything, or blah, 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 blah. So it's just a more challenged aspect on the spectrum. And it usually is where very deep learning and healing can be had. So don't fear the shadow. It's valid and important work. We don't have to spend all of our time there. But we all have challenged emotions and challenged emotions that can rise and fall unexpectedly in seemingly very boring situations, right? Maybe sometimes we get triggered or upset by something and we're like, why did that even upset me? It's probably a challenged aspect of that experience, or there's emotion in there that you just haven't dealt with yet. And doing the shadow work can be easy. It can just be letting yourself feel the emotions around these things, or start to recognize what that doom scrolling or binge watching is stopping you from processing or doing, or what you're using it to avoid. So that's a quick overview of shadow and what that means. Now I want to give you 3 tips to cling to. So if you recognize that you are experiencing one or more than one or all 5 of these surprising signs that you're getting close to an energy up leveling, here are 3 tips that you can cling to. Tip 1, make a note of synchronicities. You don't have to know what they mean. You don't have to be like there with your dream book decoder trying to look up every sign and symbol and what it means. But just be available to notice synchronicities and make a note of them. If you're someone who's great with mental notes, make a mental note. For most people, it helps to make a physical note of synchronicities that they're seeing that week or around a certain topic. Let me give you some examples of what this means. So, one of the ways to know that you're in the flow and to keep touching in with the energy of, okay, I'm moving in the positive direction for myself. I'm moving in the, I don't, correct is not the way I want to say it, but I'm moving in a good direction for myself. This is in alignment with where I need to be going. I might not be able to see the entire path. It's synchronicities. So synchronicities can come like if you were just thinking about, I don't know why I have tarot cards in front of me, so that's probably why they're on my mind, but if you were thinking about, oh, I want to start learning the language of tarot, which is a deep and expansive language, and then all of a sudden you are walking into a store and you hear 2 people talking about, oh yeah, I was starting to learn tarot and blah, 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 blah. And then you maybe are driving and you pass something else and it talks about tarot. So it's just these little droplets of things that you are focusing on, things that you're thinking about. Maybe you hear your own name. Maybe you see it on someone's name tag. Maybe you start to see feathers or dimes or pennies. And some of them can even be signs from your loved ones. It's just you recognizing little signs and synchronicities. You were just thinking about something and it showed up in some way, shape, or form. You were just thinking about the color red and you go in to the office or the class and the person at the front row is wearing a red shirt, or someone comes and interrupts that is carrying a red post-it note, right? So it's these little signs and synchronicities. It's you noticing them. And it just helps to touch into them or to recognize them so that you know there is communication with the universe happening. Because, like I said, these are 5 surprising signs. They're not obvious signs. So we can feel when all of this is happening like we're floundering a little bit, or like we are out to sea with no lighthouse, or like we've lost our way. But tapping into or becoming aware of noting those synchronicities is a great way for you to just have a little Marco Polo going on with the universe. I hope that makes sense the way I'm explaining it. Tip 2 for you to cling to is take offers seriously, like seriously into consideration when someone is offering you an opportunity around growth or learning. So it's part of the synchronicities, kind of. Because remember, one of these 5 was feeling drawn or wanting to spend time in the energy of learning. So if then someone is offering you, oh yeah, come to my meditation circle, check it out. I'm not saying you have to go. I'm saying take the offer seriously into consideration. Spend time with yourself. Think about it. Is it in alignment with the direction you're trying to go? Is it a no in your body where your body's like, yeah, I don't want to do that? And then explore that resistance. Is it because it feels like new shoes and I don't know if I'm going to be comfortable, but I kind of do want to go? Or is it, nope, that's definitely just not for me. I'm not feeling it. So when someone offers you an opportunity to learn, to grow, to expand, to explore, to connect, take it seriously into consideration if you are seeing any of those 5 signs. And I mean, it's a good thing to do anyway, but especially if you're seeing any of those 5 surprising signs of up leveling. It could be a class that has nothing to do with spirituality. It just happens to be like that's a big part of my life. It's a big part of my work. It kind of is what I do most of the time. So that's what's in my awareness a lot. But for you, it might be, maybe it's someone offering you an opportunity to volunteer. And part of that volunteering is something that you've been wanting to know about, a different aspect of your community, a different group of people, a different way of understanding. Maybe you want to learn some of the back end office stuff at this place you're going to be volunteering. So take things seriously into consideration because, sometimes we don't know up front what's going to come out of something. There might be someone there that you're meant to meet even. There might be someone there that you could cross paths with that's going to connect into something you're going to be working on in the future, or even just as a friend that you just wouldn't have even been able to predict or know about that opportunity, but you took the opportunity. So then therefore this connection's made. Just one example. So that's tip 2 is taking offers to grow or learn into serious consideration. Tip 3, and the final tip, is spend time going within, not just going it alone. So if you remember, the first of those 5 surprising signs I gave was this feeling of wanting to go inward. And like I said, it can look like quieting, it can look like time alone, or needing extra rest, or being introspective, or thinking about the past. So take that time, spend time going within, but just don't let it be an excuse for you to isolate everyone out, for you to build walls, for you to go it alone, right? Just going it alone is not going to be the answer, but taking time to go within to, maybe it's going on a nice walk and just letting yourself not think about anything. Maybe it's inspiration that's going to come in. For me, a lot of the times it's when I'm like folding laundry or doing dishes or something. So it's okay to go within, to spend time alone. Maybe it's meditation, maybe it's journaling, maybe it's you just listening to some music and doing some movement or dance. Whatever works for you for spending time going within, do that. But just don't go it alone. Reach out for support. It doesn't mean you have to tell everyone what's going on with you. Of course not, especially if you're in a phase of expansion or up leveling. That surprising inclination is to go inward or to have a quieting. But certainly there's someone in your life or in your circle, or even here in the podcast family, you've got friends and people that care about you come hang out with us and listen to the episodes, or message into the communities. But really, don't just go it alone. Spend that time within. And it's a fine line between going within and having that time of quieting or solace versus just then we realize, oh, we've shut everyone out and haven't talked to others and haven't, also been going into the world. So don't let yourself fully isolate, but it is good to spend time going within. It's when we receive the clearest guidance from our own soul. It's when we can start to be more available for signs and synchronicities from the universe, from our loved ones in the spirit world. And remember, you're never truly going it alone. And it's okay to go within. Often it is what we need. So, what did you think of these 5 surprising tips? Were they surprising to you? Like I said, I know a lot of them, it's not what we naturally think of when we think about an up leveling or a really big period of growth or expansion, going to that next level. We don't always think about that it's going to present for us in these ways. But as sensitives, these are often 5 surefire signs that you are in the process of an up leveling. So let me know how this resonated with you. Do you see yourself in any of these 5 signs? Do you have something brewing that whether you know what ultimately you're moving towards, or whether you just know that there's movement happening? Are you recognizing some of these signs? Were you a little bit surprised? I know for me, when I'm in the midst of it, if I haven't recognized it, it often does feel like, oh wow, I'm sailing far away from shore, and I don't really know. What's going on, but they are 5 surprising sure signs of up leveling. So let me know where you are with these signs. How many resonated with you? Was it 1? Was it 5? It is always great to spend time with you. And, like we talked about in the ebb and flow episode, we are always in process of receding into ourselves for learning and growth, and then expansion. So wherever you are on your journey, on your timeline, please know that I am sending you lots of love and support for you to receive and experience all that is in the highest and greatest good for your soul and for your experience in this lifetime. I hope you will join me next week for another episode of Spirit Speakeasy. Until then, big hugs. Bye for now.